Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VN. I am Amar, and together with Tauros, we have returned to the monthly Readport. I hope everybody listening had a great holiday, and with a new year's comes New Year's resolution. Surely there are some VN reading plans. Tauros, what kind of title you've started your year with?
And I decided to pick up a relatively short title that's captured my interest called Adabana Odd Tales. The plot of it is pretty interesting. The main character is a girl who's amnesic. Yes, an amnesic main heroine. And she seems to be in some sort of fantastical fairy tale landscape. She quickly learns from a buddy that her name is Shirohime. And together with this man, Kurofude, they go bouncing through fairy tale books with his strange pen brush weapon, filling in the stories into these fairy tales and eliminating any bookworms and spoilers that threaten the integrity of these stories. It's very interesting, and it's something you don't always see every day, where they have these physical books depicting the fairy tales, and they look at them and they see the ruined state they're in, with all the holes eaten in them by various bookworms, and they, quite literally dive into these stories using the powers of his magical paintbrush, and they are instantly transported into that world. It almost runs in parallel as they have their book with them, as they're physically repairing it, and in the world, they get to see these characters come to life, living their normal everyday lives, caught up in some strange, fantastical events that us, the readers, we grew up knowing. Because these are, actual Japanese children's fairy tales. So for anyone familiar with those kinds of Japanese stories growing up, you get to see some new twists on them. You get to see them, from a very different perspective. But to any, say, Westerners who are reading the English translations, it's also interesting living through them and discovering what happens next with every step alongside the main characters in these fairy tale stories.
I do have a question. Because you mentioned, and hilarious enough, I don't know how much a spoiler is to ask, how do you fight against spoilers, and what makes a spoiler be dangerous to its own fairy tale?
Yes, since they are in the fairy tale story itself, these problems of the book get manifested in some unique ways. They have to find the bookworms themselves, which are some sort of unique, wriggling, dark creatures, more resembling a shadow droplet than an actual bookworm. Once they find, these bookworms, for example, Shirohime can use her power to transform these into Adabana, into words and ink that represent the words and emotions of the stories. And they can write these back into the story and make them physical to move the plot along in real time. So, like I mentioned, these literary aspects take physical form. And when you have an art style and the flair as great as this, there's a lot of liberties into how fantastical and how beautiful and how mesmerizing you can make these aspects appear.
Okay, so basically, and sorry for focusing on spoilers, but okay, I feel like those are very much the definition of antagonists, okay? So I understand protecting books against spoilers would mean that there is a malignant force that corrupted a fairy tale in such a way that the twists have been revealed too early and there is not enough build-up and or payoff. And that was the spoiler. Okay.
As far as what I mean about the Adabana spoilers,
super fun.
It's because that's what they're called in the VN. like I said, I don't want to get too much into it, but it's
Yeah.
not, it's a little more unique than just the fact of, oh, hey, here I am, here's the twist to the ending, but showing up pages earlier. There's more to it. It's more of a ruinous aspect to the story, to the fairy tale itself, and it's interesting. You never know when something might go off the rails, because that is their job here. They don't know why they're doing it, and that's part of the overarching mystery of Adabana Odd Tales. But for the time being, they must go into these books and they must repair it, and along the way figure out what's going on with the main heroine's amnesia, what her relationship is with this other boy, and what's going on in her past.
So, is the amnesia something that hinders her repairment of the stories, or it's more personal?
It's something that really affects her in every manner. There's the whole part of her not knowing the relationships she may have with other people. It's part with her not understanding the world and how these Adabana aspects work. And of course, it hinders her from knowing what she was like in the past and her memories and her own personality. But, I'm a big fan of those kinds of setups, when you have the stories within stories, where we can focus on this one fairy tale at a time, whether it's going to be about the fairy tale Hanasaka Ji-san, or whether it's about the overarching plot in Adabana Odd Tales, about the main heroine's past. And it makes for great pacing, too. I always like that when you have the stories within stories, because you can focus on different things at a time and make progress on each of these plots, and you get milestones of in a sense, clearing these fairy tale books and bouncing back into the very nebulous aspect of these main characters' pasts. It makes for good content.
Okay, this opens two questions from me. One, do you believe, based upon your experience and what you just explained right now, that such fragmentation is why you resonate with cases in the detective work that you tend to reference, be it Danganronpa or Phoenix Wright? You tend to talk about cases and how that is a natural fragmentation.
Sure. I mean, you can think of them like chapters, in a way.
Yeah.
It's a sense of putting up roadblocks, maybe not signposts, that's the better word. Signposts in a story, in a novel, to gauge how far you've come and to when you're getting into, I suppose you could say, breaks in the overarching story. Yeah. I've read a few books sometimes where they just don't have any chapters. It just goes on and on with just paragraphs. And it's always annoying because I have no idea when to stop and take a break. Like, I'm done reading this book for the day. And on the other hand, when you had chapters, it's like, okay, I guess there's the table of contents. I guess you can see, oh, I'm getting about halfway through. Oh, I should be about 2/3 of the way through. And I guess that can kill some of the tension in the big picture. I don't know. I like having those little breakpoints.
Because if I remember correctly, that kind of pacing with deliberate milestone that you name it, sometimes referenced as a good exit points or something like that. Good moments to take a break or put book for today and go back next time, etc., etc. Okay, I do have one more question to what you talked about the fairy tales themselves. In a funny way, think about how often VNs adapt some sort of traditional tale but twist it, like the Tales of Three Kingdoms, and put anime waifus everywhere, right? It's so refreshing to hear, no, they actually take the tales as they are. Now they twist it, and your approach is to fix them, to be matching the original.
I always like those little, the twists, the revisions on old classics. And I guess that's one strength of being a reference that you assume your audience knows, is that you have a base to work off of. I kind of hate to mention this, but you see this in something like the Fate Stay Night or whatnot. You have these characters that you already understand their motivations, their skills, and heck, you even know where their goals in life take them. And so when you have a title like Adabana Odd Tales, where you just bring up these classic character archetypes and these individuals from collective, consciousness, you already get a lot of the foundation out of the way. You're ready to build off of that. And one thing I like with this involving children's fairy tales is that even if you're not aware, the foundational plot, the characters involved, they're still so, simple and straightforward enough that you can pick up on them really quickly. I guess in that sense you're missing the element of surprise, because you just get taken aback if you don't know anything about it in the first place. But it's no big deal. I guess I'm just being picky. I'm enjoying this plenty. There's some aspects I remember from my own childhood and some that I don't, but that's fine. Because I don't want to get distracted enough to not mention this. The art in Adabana Odd Tales is beautiful. I love it so much. I always love visual novels that have a sense of style in between all of its aspects, the writing, the art, the characters, the plot, the music. And Adabana Odd Tales art style is a great way to bring together that fantasy, that whimsicalness of fairy tales, along with the old classical look of like the I suppose you could say the brushstroke style of all the vibrant colors inside the fairy tales. If you can see some of the images scrolling along in the YouTube background, it's full of charm and wonder and color like that. And then there are some times when the main characters, they're done with the book, or they're back in, I guess you could say, their base of operations. And it's a lot more muted. The colors are mostly brown and dark, and it's a lot more shadowy, and it's much more normal instead of the environments and the shenanigans going on inside the fairy tales. And I really like that contrast. It lets you know that I suppose you can say you're back in the real world, versus the fantasies involved in these stories. And when you have that difference, that stark difference, it makes each of them stand out so much more.
True. And I have to say, looking at the screenshots provided by you, this kind of art style holds a lot of potential, because you don't really have the outlines defined, meaning that brief fuzziness of art can convey that mystery, wonder, and sometimes even dread, because think about it, that how much unfocused you can make a scene if you don't have to follow the completed strokes.
Yeah, and it also follows a very classical look too, to fit the history of these fairy tales.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the art style is one thing that drew me to this, to buy this VN in the first place. But then, of course, reading it and seeing the CGs and the backgrounds and the character sprites and reading along with the story, it gave me even more of an appreciation for how well it's utilized. So yeah, huge points in my book for that. Big praise. Let's go.
What a start of year.
Yeah. I'm very excited to have checked this out. I'm actually not finished with it. I think I'm about halfway through, even though it's relatively short and whatnot. But I am interested to see where this goes. I think the story does have a nice mix-up between its relaxing, lackadaisical parts, and then the, I guess you could say, moments where suddenly everything goes to heck. Or things are going terribly wrong, and it's very sudden. Because that's what the job is. They're trying to fix these, and most of the time it's slow going, slightly investigative, watching the story play out. But at any moment, there's always that fear that out of nowhere things will go wrong, even when they're trying to be on top of things.
Can go crashing down like a house of cards. I see.
Stories are a fragile thing, especially when they're trying to repair it as well, so I like where it's going. Mm-hmm. But with that said, what have you been reading, MR? Is it anything as classical as something like this?
Classical would not be the word I use. Even classy, maybe not appropriate because I'm gooning. This Gears
Oh.
of Dragoon.
Oh, wait a second. I
Oh
need you to
my
say
god,
that again. We need to all be quiet so we can get that clip of you saying that. Can you repeat yourself,
No.
MR?
I'm gooning.
Specifically, you're just a big, what is it, Gears of Dragoon fan?
Yeah. I mean, this is another title from Ninetale, so I approached this title with expectation, but also a little bit of apprehension, given how lukewarm Alchemist of Ars Magna was before. But this is not it. What a freaking title. Okay. The setting sounds pretty typical RPG D&D-like fantasy, but it quickly proves to be way more than that. This is a VN with gameplay elements. It's customary in the Ninetales titles. You see the world from the perspective of adventurous spelunker, just a fighter who enters dungeons for fame and loot. Well, it starts innocently enough. We learn quickly that there are some mysteries of the dungeon, known as Dragon Shaft, that our protagonist is set to uncover. Okay? Soon enough, he meets another human, a total prowler novice. Oh yeah, the prowler, I think, is the formal name of the people venturing into the dungeon. Newbie soon reveals that she carries a mysterious key to the secret of the dungeon. After a few more expeditions, protagonist shares that he too is a bearer of mystical key, and so the plot is set. The adventure begins and the intrigue deepens. To the lower floors we go, okay? What? There is something about how I expect and I read a title from 90s and I'm like, okay, a key, a mysterious MacGyver MacGuffin that protagonist has from the start of the game appears so often in the titles. Why does it keep me entertained so much? Okay, why the hell does it work? I don't know. I can't describe it to you, but it's just intriguing enough that you need to get to the bottom of it all. And maybe part of it is the characters are so vibrant and so over the top wacky D&D party that you're forming. And maybe this is something that I just like when you have that kind of band of completely different characters. Some of those tropes I didn't know I needed, okay? Coming to that game, I did not think what I needed in my life is a wannabe idol dragon songstress Sunzera. That mix is something else. When she shouts, "Don't misunderstand," at the same time as she says, "Pay attention to me because I'm singing," I can't stop laughing. There is something about
did you say dragon?
Yeah, dragon.
You kind of glossed over that part, I think, and that was the one that kind of took me the most by surprise.
But you know that you played enough VNs and you've seen enough anime. When I'm saying dragon and girl, it will be definitely more showcase the girl part than the dragon. And then they will contrast that, and they will introduce her brother. That will be the opposite. They'll show that he's a dragon, like big muscly monster, barely anything humanoid. You've read enough VNs and seen enough anime to understand that's exactly what they did.
But of course. And we get more of that, and we get more of that with this and Gears of Dragoon, right?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, such as the good brother does, he sits down, takes out his banjo, and starts playing music so she can sing. Like, what is going on? Just,
So the story's full of those silly, I guess you could say, slice of life or adventuring, typical funny, lighthearted fare when needed.
And yes, and I think that propels me forward to go and see what is underneath all of those characters, what makes them tick, what will be their purpose of spelunking and going to the dungeon. But on the contrast, I think what you reference in your title, they also do very interestingly, and maybe on a bigger scale. You reference fixing every single fairy tale as a milestone. Here, chapters are culminating in some grandiose thing happening. So you open a mysterious huge door, or there's summit, global summit, and maybe they even make some Geneva Convention rules so adventurers don't kill each other. Like some grandiose thing happen, and then we proceed to the next chapter, and I'm invested ever more.
Mm-hmm. Now, usually the flip side with these is that there's also the serious conflict, the character depth kind of stuff, right?
Well, first thing first, I haven't finished the title, so I don't know precisely how much conflict each character has.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of them have an inherent flaw they want to overcome. Fair enough. And I barely touched the side stories pertaining to each and every one of them.
Okay.
But underneath all of that fun adventuring, there are some intrigues and plays of power between two opposing ideologies. Those who embrace magic and those who reject magic and go to technology. And it fuels the intrigue of how those two tribes form guilds, coexist or maybe compete. And if compete, there comes a friction. And this is how the wheels turn.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I just, there's so many funny character interactions that stem from combination of several aspects. So for example, another character that just appeared in my playthrough was a Kudera Chunibyo robot without her memories uploaded. And that's such an explosive combination because I don't know what she's talking about. Every single line of her dialogue is so chuny, it's hilarious. Now, granted, so far I haven't spent much time talking about gameplay.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
So this is, and why I made this transition, I'll explain momentarily. But the gameplay is dungeon exploration. With RPG elements, you have some statistic you tweak, and it starts quite slowly. It's manageable, you have few points to spend, equipments to equip, but the more you go, the more you adventure, the more you understand how the game ticks, and giving you the unlimited amount of skill resets, which is basically respec if you play the game that allows that. Oh my god, I definitely had some analysis paralysis, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think, Ninetale as developer in all their games nailed the aspect of giving you just enough tools to customize, in this case characters, in their tactical strategy game, your divisions and armies, that it makes fun gameplay loop of, yeah, this is my character, I will make her the best I can, and I'll protect her because I want to know how the story ends, okay? You won't stop me. And that's a very enticing loop.
That's interesting because
Now,
I'm assuming, what genre is it? It's the tactical, grid-based, turn-based kind of game?
yes, tactical grid-based in which turn, quote unquote, takes one step in a dungeon.
Okay. I feel like it's actually easier and probably a good thing in this case, where you can overlevel one character and just have them stomp through the whole game, right? Because in this case, when you have these, I guess you fleshed out characters and you have your favorite waifu, it gives it gives a player that opportunity if they just want to overlevel their favorite and stomp through everything. Whereas on the other hand, you could very well have a balanced party and adapt to any unique situations and probably see more character interactions that way, right?
Yes, I would say so. Importantly, it's not a combat that you have one character in. You always go in parties. So combat always is up to 6 characters against whatever horde of enemies at this moment you've encountered.
Okay.
And you transition from, let's say, roaming in the dungeon to a combat menu. Then you fight in turns, blah, blah, blah. It's semi-automatic kind of, you plan turn, you click the button execute, and then they go.
Okay.
So it's an interesting style of doing the combat and the entire gameplay. It is reminiscent of how Ninetale tends to do it, because almost all of their titles have that similarity in which you don't fully control the characters. You have a planning phase, you plan that, you hit execute, then you see what happens. And then every single turn you readjust. So it's interesting. It's way more engaging than Alchemist of Ars Magna was, because that was too simple, and this is just complex enough that keeps me engaging, but it was simple enough that I immediately started on a higher difficulty. So it's definitely challenging, which I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, you like the challenging games, don't you?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Is it the sort where...
definitely don't...
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I definitely don't like Cakewalk, because then I don't feel, not necessarily how I earn, especially boss fights, which are a pain here. Deservedly so.
Okay. Is it
but
the
they
sort...
are conquerable.
Is your approach more of the sort where you just enjoy overcoming a challenge, or do you enjoy more the synergies of putting together some ridiculous game plan and it finally seeing it pay off?
I would say a little bit column A, a little bit column B, although probably I lean more on the overcoming challenge, ultimately. Now, I want to go back slightly to the Chunibyo robot amnesiac Kudera, because even her skills have description that just make me laugh. So, while other characters have protection from criticals, name, she has protect me, oh divine shield. Other have riposte, and she has taste the lance of a hero. Others maybe have a barrier, physical barrier. She has let fly the banner of our crusade. Those names. This is so funny. I keep reading all her description, and everything is just Chunibyo, every single thing.
Yeah, the flavor text. I always love it when they they take liberties with that and they start getting into character with the skill descriptions.
Now, funnier still is that, as you can imagine, this title has been developed for Japanese first. So that means they used fewer characters to convey sentences and message. Translated, some of those descriptions on the Chunibyo character just don't fit the space. Those are so long.
Oh my goodness.
And it's so hilariously looks out of place to me because of that. That's that cherry on top for the comedic timing.
All right. So I guess, yeah, what is there anything you're looking forward to in this game? You mentioned you're still playing it, even though you've already sunk a ton of hours into it. Holy crud. But what are you most looking forward to in it so far?
I don't know where it leads. So far, I'm really struggling to predict plot twists. Importantly, my prior knowledge from Ninetale games leads me to believe there tends to be a split. There's some sort of worldly catastrophe, and you have a choice to make that will be very decisive, and it will divide the communities involved. Oftentimes it was more chaotic approach or more lawful approach, more pragmatic or more opportunistic, etc., etc. I don't know what will happen here. Will it be different? Will you have to pledge allegiance to a guild? I don't know where this is leading. I'm super intrigued. I'm in. They got me. I'm invested.
Awesome. That's the best you can ask for.
I don't know why in Ninetale titles I tend to love those characters with giant lance and shield, but this robot girl is another one of those.
Nice.
That I want to see. Okay, you need to get your memories restored. I need to know more about the lore of the sword. Come on, let's go questing.
Oh my god, MR back with his world building and the lore. Oh baby.
And the other character I remember with the giant lance and shield was in VB Frontier, and she was a historian. Like, yes, I'm going to discover all the scrolls and tomes, and you tell me about the world. Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me where to go. And it's the same.
Aye. So while MR gets all engrossed in that world and all of that background, we are going to have to end today's episode here. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed listening. And let us know, especially what you think about any new titles you may be reading as well.
Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed this episode, and venture out.
Venture out.